My name is Guilherme and I'm a project management specialist. I help professionals to become successful project managers. One of the ways what I do that is helping professionals like that. They are struggling with their projects. They are feeling anxious, syndrome of impostor, that they have too much in their plates, that they feel that they work. They are running around without knowing what direction to go. And what I do with those people, I help them to gain clarity, to understand priorities, and to understand, of course, how to move forward. Because this is the important when you are in a situation like that. So before I forget here, make sure you like this video and share with other people so to make sure that other people can learn what we are going to discuss here today. Because this is a very critical content that for all the project managers there and for all people struggling as PMOs, project managers, and so on. I mentioned to you that I help those people, if people is struggling in those situations. Usually, what happens there? I talk with people. I have people, of course, in my development programs, in my mentoring programs, and the kind of question that I have, I'm going to open one here, even to illustrate. And one of the people were saying to me that I have a lot of urgent tasks. There's a lot of overlapping tasks there, and there's a lot of unpredictable tasks. So we are running, 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 but it seems that we are not delivering what we need. It seems that we are missing stuff that we should have been doing. We lost track of our projects. We lost track on what we need to do. And then, of course, with that, you start to have more conflict, more things to work. Then you enter kind of a firefight mode where you're just tackling fires, 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 and you do not know what to do that. What you should do in a situation like that. The first step is start to gain clarity. And then, of course, that's how it works well in a mentoring program. Seeing from outside, it's much easier to gain clarity. So then if you are going through the situation, but if you are going through the situation, stop a bit, breathe, and start to understand what's going on there. First things that first signs that you're about to lose control of your project there. You have a lot of urgent tasks. You have a lot of unplanned tasks. And here's the following. Urgent tasks, they're always going to exist. The unplanned tasks, they're always going to pop up, but they cannot be the majority of the time that you have there. So what you need to start to understand is what you are missing in the steps that you are taking. Because if you have a lot of urgent tasks, it's because probably something that you missed in a planning phase, or and I already know that if I mention a planning phase, people say, yeah, but I'm following Scrum, I'm trying to follow Kanban. Well, all those all those different frameworks, they have a planning. What do I mean by that? Well, a planning is you have a big backlog, you have a big to-do list. You need to organize those things and you need to prioritize those things because it cannot be that everything is priority. Because if you have a big list of things that you have as a priority, that means that you do not know how to prioritize things. One example of a mentoring case that I had a few months ago with someone working in an aerospace company in Belgium. There, he's an engineer. He was managing a project there for a big company there where they are trying to expand their production capacity to assemble and maintain airplane engines. And of course, he was a lot of under pressure there because the department manager they were pushing, or the directors they were pushing because they wanted better capacity because they need that and blah 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 blah. And I don't need to tell you how what all those people are telling for pressure, but this guy was basically running around, trying his best, putting a lot of work, but he was not getting results there. And then I start to discuss with him basically it's common when you see people in that situation. Basically, he starts to talk about everything. He starts to talk about tooling. He starts talking about documentation. He starts about talking about space and all those things. He would come and back in all those discussions. What's very important when you are in a situation like that? Bring clarity and structure. Why? Because then you can start to tackle the project, the problem. So what did happen in 1 hour first session? And then when he starts talking about tooling, then I start, okay, what's tooling? And they say, we need to buy tools to make sure that they have it available to work in the engines, to assemble, disassemble, to fix it, or whatever they're going to fix to do with those tools. Then my question to him, okay, when you are talking about tooling, you are kind what's that? It's one tool, two tools, 10 tools, and then he mentioned it's more than 100 tools. Then the first thing that I told him is say, you cannot manage something like in a buckle like that. You cannot manage average. You need to break down the problem in smaller pieces that you can manage, and you do something about that. So when you talk about those 100 and I think 130 tools that he had, I asked him, what's the priority one that you have there? And then he was not sure. So in this situation, if you're running around, you are running behind of your schedule, you need to start to understand how you're going to break down those things and how you're going to prioritize. So in the discussion, the example I'm using here, what I did, okay, 130 tools. What's the lead time for those tools? And then he say, for those, for one, this one is at 10 weeks, 15 weeks, but I'm not sure about everything. So the first step when you are in a situation, pressure there, you need to gain clarity there. It might as it might be as well that you cannot get and do anything at a time, but you need step by step. 132s. Which one's the priority? Then 1 week after he come back with a list. Okay, these two here take 6 months. These two here take, I don't know, 10 weeks. So what's our priority to look for in the first place? The two that has 6 months lead time, because that will directly affect your project timeline. Because this is one of the things that needs they are in the critical path there. And then we start to break down the problem in smaller pieces is in organizing it in a way that was actionable, in a way that was prioritized, and in a way of course, that was manageable. And why I'm giving this example? Because if you have too many tasks, there's a big too many tasks, too many urgent tasks, too much thing going on, there's a big risk that you are following and that you got into a trap of maybe for lack of experience, lack of information, or maybe just because of pressure, then you start to accept it. But what's important when you are in this situation? You first you create, you gain visibility in what you are doing there, and depending on what type of project that you are working on, a Kanban can be a great help to identify this. So you put a big list of things, everything that needs to be done there for the project. Put everything in the Kanban there. So you gain visibility, everything that needs to be done. Where are all those things in different phases? Because it's very important that you start to understand that starting projects, starting tasks, it's easy. What matters and what's important is starting completing them. So coming back to the example that I was using there, it does not help if this person was working on tooling, in documentation, on space, and all the other stuff. Because he was running trainings, he was running around trying to arrange training and say, but does it need to be like that now? The training, does it affect your critical path? No. So you are using precious time because you are under pressure to execute something that it goes for the future. So going back again to the Kanban notion there, and if you are a bit more used with Lean or with Kanban, you might have heard it. There's something called work in progress. And Little's law says what? Basically, more work in progress that you add in your system, and if you think the flow of work is one system itself, more will take to deliver those tasks. Because first of all, if you are multitasking, you are making a big mistake there because multitasking will not help you to achieve anything because there's also if you are doing a knowledge worker there's also called context switching, which basically is every time you are switching from one task to another, you are losing part of your brain power and part of your time just to figure out where you stop it. For example, if you're working in an Excel sheet or if you're working a timeline in a business case and you stop in the middle in a random point, and at some point you need to come back with that you stop it to reply to an email, to go to a meeting, or to do something like that. When you come back on that, You have some time to figure out, okay, where did I stop? Then you need to look for where did I stop in the business case, in the timeline, and so on. That's what's called context switching. And if you are working in an industry, in a manufacturing line, every time you need to change one production from one product to another, there's something that's called change over time. The context switching is something similar to that, but it helps with us, with our brain, the way to deal with things. So, meaning that if you start a lot of tasks, you're probably losing most of your brain power and of your time with this context switching there, which is not help you to achieve your project. So if you do have if you have challenges with, first, have the overview what needs to be done. Second, prioritizing what needs to be done. And third one, focusing, because multitasking is not going to help you to go faster. And again, this is Liro's law. If you do not believe me, I have content about that. You can Google about that one, or you can even look for a manufacturing line that you're going to see those things out there. So when you are with this feeling that you are starting, I'm saying I think I'm losing control. I think I have too much in my plate. Very likely is you start to lose clarity in what you need to do. And that might be because, for example, I've worked in a different mentoring situation where the person gets all the different inputs. For example, it can be a big company, but also one of the people I was talking on in a startup company, because there's a lot to be done there. And I do understand and say, then you start to have ideas, you see the challenge, you say, oh, let's do that. Let's create a risk criteria. Let's improve your risk management assessment. Let's create a template for the reporting. Let's create a KPIs. Let's create a dashboard. Let's go for a new software that will help with that. Let's do a training initiative. And you get it, all those things there. The problem is you get all those things at the same time. So you bring a lot of confusion to what needs to be done. That's why prioritization is important, because if you have a clear view on what needs to be done, you need to prioritize. And then you lose focus, because then you start working 10 different directions and you end up not progressing, not moving anymore. And what happens while you are working 10 different directions? More problems can start to pop up. So you add more stuff in the pipeline because you're trying to solve those problems. And more problems you create with that. So it's very important in this journey here that you understand that this overview that I mentioned, this overview about what needs to be done, this is what you call, what PMBOK also like to call the systemic view, how those moving parts needs to go. It's very important, because based on the systemic view, on understanding all those things that you have there and all those things that needs to be executed, you can start to prioritize. And with prioritization, you can move. But without having a good organization, prioritization will fail, because you start, okay, I have 10 tasks, I'm going to prioritize two. Yeah, but you miss part of the things that had to be done there. So sooner you have some urgent tasks or a lot of unexpected stuff that they pop up to you, then people start to throw on you, and you start to get lost in what you're going to do it. And of course, then depending on the organization that you are working on, some organizations have better maturity, some organizations have lower maturity. You see that, we lost control of it. Then someone has an idea. Let's put a software in place. Let's buy a software in place. And again, I'm not against software. Software can be a great tool, but keep in mind that a software is only a tool. It will be as good as you can make from that one. So if you create let's say, a timeline, because I mentioned the example of the timeline that the person was struggling with the tool. The person created a timeline there, and I asked, okay, what's the critical path that you have here, the timeline? Then the answer, I don't know, because then the person started to show me the timeline. Then we entered that detail there also, because of course in a mentoring session you have the time to do that. And I saw it. Then he put in the timeline tooling. Say again, you're trying to manage with average, and that in reality does not work, because you have the extreme case, and because you do not know the extreme case, you just see the average, and you cannot take any decision, any good decision on prioritization, because you need to understand the extremes to better understand how you are going to prioritize that. And so using a software, the software is as good as you can make it. And if you use a software, but again, you keep the same challenges with organization, just adding work there. So you see product backlogs that are to-do lists where people just add, 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 add. But they say, are you completing of any of those things? Because the outcome or the value that you are going to expect from those things, you're going to get when you start to complete them. So it does not matter if you start a risk assessment, if you start to create a template, if you start to implement a software, if you start to look for a software, if you start to, for doing for a training, you are always going to be in that situation. For example, a very common misunderstanding on priority that people you see in organizations when, and I've heard it from people that sometimes people they are working, they have so much work on their plates, and then they keep saying, "I need more people. We need more people. We need to do something else. It's not doable like that." And then suddenly the company agrees and say, "Okay, I agreed. I'm going to hire someone." Then they hire someone to help this person, and then say, "Okay, now you need to invest the time to train to get this person on board up to speed, so this person can start to execute it and can also so you gain more capacity of execution there." But what I've seen a lot of organizations and a lot of people they are saying, but I don't have the time for that. But here's the problem with the prioritization. And I do understand that sometimes you have some situations that you end up saying, I need to execute the project, otherwise the project will be delayed. But if you do not have the time to train new people, to get people up to speed, you're never going to be able to take part of the work that's overloading you and putting other person's plate. So this overload that will continue there. So you need to have an idea how you're going to level up your resource. And training in this organization is very important part of that. So training, onboarding, getting people up to speed should be a priority for any type of company. And I've seen that people saying that they are too busy. They are too busy to help on onboarding, explaining how things needs to be done. They are too busy to explain procedures. They are too busy to write a procedure down. They are too busy to use a software. But the thing is, it's not how busy you are. It's what's your outcome in what you're doing there. In in a lot of cases, and I see that those people they are busy moving from one task to another. They are busy from doing a lot of other stuff. They are busy in tackling new tasks that always come up, a new urgency there. So it's very important that you need organization, and not only you, everybody needs some type of organization. What I'm telling you works exactly the same thing in your personal life. You need to have an organized agenda. Which are the days that you need to have meetings? What's the time that you are going to study? What's the time that you are going to invest in other stuff? What's the time that you are, for example, in other stuff? By other stuff, I mean, what's the time that you are going to invest reviewing your timeline? What's the time that you are going to think about your scope of your project? What's the timeline that you are going to think about your team? You cannot only do those things when issues pop up. Because if you only do those things when issues pop up, what's going to happen? Pop up one issue, then you are going to do the very critical things even less. Then another issue will pop up. So we are going to do this important but not urgent stuff. If you know about the Eisenhower matrix, you are going to do it even more. And in the end, by doing that, you are only tackling urgent items and you are ignoring the long term planning that needs to happen. So, because you are ignoring the long term planning, more urgent stuff will happen, more unplanned stuff will happen, more overlapping tasks that you're going to have, and you enter a vicious cycles there. And then, of course, depending on the type of project, then you're going to get a lot of pressure from directors, from managers, sometimes from your team because your team needs direction. And I've seen recently with another project manager, the team was asking for direction. Okay, what's our timeline? When do we need to reach those targets? How do we go there? And the project manager said, but I'm too busy to work in a timeline. I'm busy doing other stuff with other projects because I have too much in my plate. So understanding that you need also to say no. This is quite important. Say no is a very important part of prioritization. Because if you say yes for everything, that means that you are saying no for a lot of other things. And in the end, if you combine not a good overview on what needs to be done, if you combine lack of prioritization with multitasking and with just saying yes for everything, you are going to be in big trouble. You're going to be in a place that you're kind of the dog chasing the tail. That will never end. That will never end. That I can tell you. And I know that because I've worked in organizations that they have this situation there, and I've seen that happening. I've seen that happening with managers. I've seen that happen with peers, with colleagues. I've done that myself in the beginning until I start to study and start to study a better way to do that. And because I'm saying that does not mean that I'm perfect, and nobody will be perfect in anything. So if you say prioritization, so what you are looking for, it starts to move to the right direction. It start to get consistency. Yes, the urgent stuff will pop up. So you already know that urgent stuff pop up. Block some time in your agenda. Plan ahead. There are some urgent stuff that can pop up. But for example, things that I've seen people running around struggling and done it in the last minute because they are too busy, that in the end is just a horrible planning or horrible way to handle your activities. For example, a lot of organizations, they have monthly project reports, or they have monthly project review boards with managers and directors and so on. But usually those reports and those meetings, they happen every month in exactly same week, or maybe in a lot of companies they say it's the second week or the third week of the month. They, I don't know, Monday or Wednesday or Tuesday or whatever day at that same time, you have the same meeting. But if you already know that, you just plan that on your agenda. For example, I have a spot blocked in my agenda 2 days before my review meetings. Why? Because then I can organize everything 2 days up front. If I need something to discuss something, I still have some time, some lag, and I can organize and I can deliver everything that I need on time. What I've seen people doing, they're just so running around the tail that when the meeting pop ups, then people start to push it because, of course, if you need to send a report to management, you also have a deadline for that. And people say, "I need my report. I need my report." And those people they leave it for the last minute. And I've seen then people entering the nights for doing that, or doing that few few with few days later. But they say, "I'm too busy." Well, this is the perfect example of a horrible planning. If there's something that happens every month, exactly in the same dates, you can plan ahead of that. You don't need to leave that to the last minute to see what's going to happen. And that's exactly so. If you do that with something that's if I see people doing that with something that's very simple, that's reporting and planning for meetings, that's going to happen also with stuff that's not in your agenda, meaning people will not look for their timelines. And in the case that I mentioned again, for the mentoring that I had in Belgium, then after some of those discussions, the person organized the timeline. Then I asked him, "Oh, can we take a look on the timeline?" And then he was lost in the timeline. He was not aware what was done, what was not done, what was the status of each of those tasks. And I simply showed to him two very easy ways to get out of this situation in a timeline. There are two columns that you can add, for example, in the MS project that will help you to stop struggling with that. One, clicking insert column, status of the task, because the program will show you what's a late task, what's a future task, and what's an in progress task. And the other column that they need to work together, otherwise the program will not help you much, is percentage of completion of the task. Meaning, if the task is complete, you just click a button and say, the task is 100%. And the program will mark, okay, this is done. You don't need to think about that anymore. But this one, it's late. Then you focus on what's late. That's those two columns, what they help you to do. Have an overview and prioritize. Why? Because you're going to focus on what's there and what needs to be done. What are the late tasks that you need to take a look on? And if you need to change something, how does it impact what you need to do going forward? That's why I've seen a lot of project managers they don't update their timelines because they do not understand how to use this column and how to update the status of the task. Because if you do not update the status of the task, you open a timeline again. Then you say, the timeline is good, but you are not sure which tasks you need to move, what you need to update. Then what happened in practice? Those people just abandon the timeline, and then they end up in trouble. Why? Because then they lost track how the project is going, how the project is reporting. That's why you end up in a watermelon project. If you don't know, a watermelon project is green from outside but completely red from inside. And it's of course not just due to the timeline. It can be several other different reasons, but that's one of them. So understanding how to use the tools, and nowadays we have a lot of tools, and we are going to have even more like artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence can help with a lot of stuff, but artificial intelligence it's also a tool. If you do not know how to get value from that, you just going asking stupid questions there to artificial intelligence, like to ChatGPT. when when the First World War started. And then I'm not sure if you ask that what kind of answer that you get there, but ChatGPT is not an encyclopedia, meaning that much better you look that information on Wikipedia. So be aware of that. If you are struggling, you need clarity. And how you're going to bring clarity? Create an overview, put this overview in place. If you have this with this overview, you can start to build a systemic view. You are going to be able to prioritize and focus. When you do that, then you start to do that in your project. And before you say, yeah, but I don't have the time, yes, it's not going to be easy at first. But more you procrastinate to do that, worse the situation you get. So my question is to you, like, how much worse you can wait there? Or you are going to wait until the situation is unsustainable, then you are fired, or you need to find a new job, or you're going to solve it, then you are going to be able to tap to show the good work that you are doing, and maybe you are going to get possibilities for a raise, for a promotion, to progress in your career there. So don't get lost in the mess. It's impossible to find something in the middle of a mess. Organization is essential. And of course, I'm not saying that everything will be perfect organized, but you need to have at least a level of organization where you can have this full view there, which enables you to prioritize and focus. So instead of jumping on and looking how to implement a new software, how to do another training, how to hire more people, first build on this overview, build on this understanding, this systemic view that's going to help you to learn what then you're going to learn in a systemic way what needs to be done. In a systemic way, why? Because if you just look for the tasks that you have to do in the week and the tasks suddenly are delayed, does not mean much. Just means that you also do not know how to organize and prioritize the tasks of your team. Because what happens is if you don't know what how to do it with yourself, you're not going to know how to do it with your team. So suddenly you're going to be in a meeting. Let me tell you what's going to happen. And you're going to ask, for example, oh, the design engineer, you need to do this. Okay, then you take a note. I need to do this. Then you take a note. And you need to do this. And suddenly this guy will have, or this guy or girl, or this person will have 10 times, 10 things in his or her agenda to do, in to-do list. And you're going to say, but I want everything this week. And if you say, and the person might ask, okay, is there any priority? And you say no, and the person will just work whatever in those 10 items. It's always important to have priorities. What's the most important item here? What's the most valuable item for the timeline, for the customer, for cost, for the team? Maybe it's something that you're struggling in the team and needs to be solved to make sure the team can properly progress the work. But without the overview, without the prioritization, without the focus, you're going to keep struggling in what you're doing there. Very important here. Of course, there are more tools that you can do for doing that. There are tools that help you to design a calendar with a good design in your calendar there. Then it will help you to start to manage those things. One of the very simple things that I can tell you, start your day or do that a day before asking what are the three most important stuff that they need to be done tomorrow. Write it down and work on that. What you are doing on that? Prioritization and trying to focus on execution. Of course, if you do not have the view, the whole view, what you're going to do there, just those three items, they're going to help, but you're going to pop up a lot of stuff there. So very important that you build the overview, that you have this high level of organization that will help you with prioritization, focusing and execution for yourself and for your team. Again, make sure that you comment here in this video. I want to know, I want to hear from you. What did you learn in this video? So comment here and help me to understand. Why? Because when you do that, it also gives me more insights how to better prepare content for you and how I can better support you in your project management journey. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, but also on YouTube. Every week there is new content on YouTube, and every day there is new content on Instagram, also with a Q&A box there. Uh, to Q&A box so you also can ask your questions. If you want to get better support from me, just checking the links here to see how I can support you in the journey. I have free events, I have a development program, I have mentoring programs, I have different types of training. If you are interested in that, just go there and check it. Thank you and see you in the next one. Bye.